Hello, and welcome to Beyond the Deal, where we discuss business, entrepreneurship, and commercial real estate. My name is Lacey Labs, and I'm here with my co-host, Laura Martin. In today's episode, we interview James Zugay, Recorder of Deeds for Dauphin County. Jim was elected as the Recorder of Deeds in the year 2004 and has made it his career. He's established significant technological advancements in the office, including digitizing historical records and making public information easily accessible to everyone, while protecting private information of the citizens of Central PA. He has also helped Dauphin County to keep property taxes in check for 18 years and has started a military ID program for veterans, helping them to get access to discounts and other veteran programs. Tune into this episode to hear more about Jim's years in office as the Recorder of Deeds, the experiences that he shares, and what advice he would give to real estate professionals and investors. Jim Zugay, welcome to Beyond the Deal. Thanks for joining us this morning.
It's great to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. Welcome. Let's get started. Just tell us a little bit about yourself, kind of how you got started and what led you to want to run for this office and get into this career.
Well, I started out, lived in Middletown, went to Middletown High School, and then went to Shippensburg University. So you'll see a central Pennsylvania, Dauphin County kind of theme going on in my life. And one of the jobs I think that was the funniest is that I was on the road crew for Middletown Borough and during one of the summers at Shippensburg. And I'll never forget that when my friend who was also on the crew, they hired summer kids during the season. And so I remember our boss taking a piece of paper like this, and we knew the town because both my friend and I had born and raised there. So he gave us a list and said, okay, go out and mow these locations. All right, so we get in a truck, we get a lawnmower, and we go out. And usually you kind of meet up at about 2:30, 2:45 at the plant, and you hose down your mowers and everything, and then you come in and then you punch out. So we do that. We come in, my friend and I, and we say, boss, no, this is our first day. Boss, we got everything done on the list. There's no concerns. We got it all done. And he looks at me with these eyes and says, you've got to be kidding, right? And he goes, that was supposed to last you all week. So it was sort of like this kind of, for whatever reason, from that moment on, and I'll never forget it, is that there was an expectation that government or government work should be a little less hard than regular non-governmental work. And I always carried that chip on my shoulder. And because if I was in a position, whether or not whatever it was, I wanted to do the best I could. And I didn't feel that government was a place that you should do any less. And so I took that chip on my shoulder and went to law school. I was the first graduating class at Widener University School of Law in Harrisburg, Dauphin County, and graduated from there. And 1992 was not a great year to get a job. It was tough, and so I took a job. Most likely didn't really want it at the Dauphin County Public Defender's Office. So after I started there, it was a terrific experience. I got to assist a lot of people who were, what I want to say is that they had their worst day. And nobody wants to ever be judged on their worst day in this world. And I got to meet a lot of folks who just did have that worst day. The hardest part, I say, for a judge to look down at a defendant when sentencing is it a bad person who did a bad thing? Or is it a good person who did a bad thing? And that's the most difficult thing for a judge to do. And there were a lot of good people who did bad things. And so it was very helpful. It got me on my career. I enjoyed it quite a bit. I stayed there for 11 years. So I guess I did, unless nobody wanted to hire me. So I met my wife. She was a year behind me in law school. And then we got married and we moved to Hershey, where we started our family. And we have now 2 daughters that are grown. So it's that was my start, but the public office was very interesting. I always wanted to run for public office because I thought I could assist folks, use my law degree, use my knowledge of the local area. And a colleague of mine, his name was Phil Spassif, he was the current Recorder of Deeds. Really good fellow. And still today, we get together once a month for lunch. And Phil said, hey, I'm looking at retiring. Would you consider the Recorder of Deeds office? And I'm thinking, why would I want to really do that? And I had ascended through the Public Defender's Office to the second in command. and thought, well, you know what? This would be an interesting department to run. I'd be an elected official. I'd start to get that kind of feel whether or not I like that. And I decided to give it a go. And here I am 20 years later, still the recorder of deeds for Dauphin County. So it's been really rewarding for me.
Very cool. You were elected in what year?
Oh, goodness. Ran in 2003, and I took office in 2004 for the first time.
Okay.
And recently, last year, was reelected again.
Yeah. How long are the terms?
They are 4-year terms.
Okay.
4-year terms we have to run every 4 years. It's interesting. A lot of people ask me about why is that an elected office, and it harkens back to way back, like the district attorney, the sheriff, the controller, the clerk of courts, the prothonotary, the coroner, register of wills. All these folks are elected, and I like it that way. It gives the people a choice, because if you're running your department well, the voters get to reward you. If you're not, they can remove you, and it's not done by some entity or some higher authority, and you're stuck as a voter or a constituent with that poor person, poor leader in that office. So that's what I really enjoy that.
So for our listeners, what does the Recorder of Deeds do? Like what do you do? What's your daily function? And what makes it challenging or interesting for you?
The Recorder of Deeds for each county is in charge of all the land transactions involved in that county. So in other words, your deeds, your mortgages, land subdivision plans. So at any time any kind of person breaks ground to do a new development, that plan comes to us. We record them. We put them out for public use and public view so that the world is on notice as to who owns that property. So that's a full-time position in that we do about 35 to 40,000 documents a year. We need to make sure they're done correctly, because obviously your piece of property or your home, you purchased a home just recently. That is probably the most expensive piece of item that you're going to purchase in your life. And so we want to make sure it's recorded, it's right, and you know that it's there safe. Second, 2 other things that we do that were given to us by the state legislature. One is the notary commission. So, for example, anybody who wants to be a notary in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania has to take their test. They then get a bond, and then they come to the Recorder of Deeds office to record that notary. So that way, if they are acknowledging folks use the word notarize, but acknowledging a document, someone can go to any database like our Recorder of Deeds and see if they are truly a notary and should be there. So it's sort of their registry for us as constituents. The second thing is that, totally unrelated to land, is that the legislature gave us the power to record DD 214s. So what's that? That's the honorable discharge for our veterans from the armed services. They receive a DD 214. It's a very detailed 1, 2, 3, or 4-page sheet, gives the rank, when they entered, any awards, commendations, date of birth. And they gave us the area for that to be the safekeeping depository for that information. One of the things the only document in our office that is absolutely confidential is that DD 214, from the veteran. That way, folks aren't looking. You can't go searching and seeing that type of information. Folks say, "Well, why do we need to have that done?" Unfortunately, most times it's used for funerals. So in other words, and most of the service folks are men, so you would have a spouse or someone call and say, "Hey, my spouse just died." You want to get them military funeral benefits and things, and you're traumatized. You just had a death of a loved one for, you've probably been together for a long time. And our office then can provide that to the funeral home, get that person the military honors they deserve, rather than God knows where that military discharge paper would be if they were searching in her home when it happened maybe 40 years ago when they were discharged from the service.
That's a great service, I'm sure, to those who lose their veteran loved ones.
It's terrific. One of the things we dovetailed on that was we partnered with businesses in Dauphin County and surrounding areas where that if a veteran were to come in and record their DD 214, we would also take a picture of them, and we created a Dauphin County Veterans ID card so that when you go to local businesses, they would honor you as a veteran, and they would see that you're a veteran and give you the discounts. Unfortunately, there are some folks out there that try to get discounts and they're not veterans. So if a business knows that the person has our card, they know for sure they're a veteran because we do not hand out that card unless they provide us with the DD-214.
So you're doing mortgages, deeds, land development, subdivision,
Correct.
the notary, and the DD-214s.
That's correct. And everything in between. Any assignment of mortgage, you've probably heard of the word MERS, Mortgage Electronic Registration System, all these documents that they're a clearinghouse for mortgages. So anything where you assign or it's satisfied, we do all those documents. Anything with land.
Do you run into problems? I see this at closing sometimes where like previous deeds have not been, previous mortgages have not been satisfied. Do you run into that sometimes?
We do. There was a period of time where some banks, unfortunately, now it's very common, where if you pay off your mortgage, the bank who you took it out from or who was assigned to will then automatically file with us a satisfaction of mortgage. And that's what they should be doing. There was a period of time during the craziness of the loan expansion in the 2003, 2004, 2005 time, where banks, to cut costs, were not having the client pay up front for the satisfaction. So they would just basically tell the client, hey, just, you're on your own to do this satisfaction. And folks didn't know what to do.
Right.
And that created a period of time where you had some situations where mortgage were not, quote, properly satisfied on the record. They may have been paid off, but they did not. In fact, I just had one last week where 3 subsequent mortgages have happened, but there was one mortgage in the past that had not been satisfied. So 3 different lending institutions lent to that person with an open mortgage outstanding. So it
can get a little crazy.
It can happen.
How many years do you go back in documents, and then how many years, I guess, are electronic? I was just curious about that.
We go back to 1785 was when the first deed was done in Dauphin County, and every one of those deeds is electronically available. We have a website. We pioneered a website. It was the first in Dauphin County where folks can look for their deed and their documents free of charge on our website. We started that back, it's been a little while, probably about 2006.
How many employees do you have?
Funny you say that. When I started, we had 13 full-time and 1 part-time.
Okay.
Today we have 4. And that's one of the harkens back to doing things right, not settling to do a week's worth of work in one day, or vice versa, is that we were able to, with technology, not have to rehire after folks retired. None of those were terminations or anything like that, but we were able to do that because when I first started, a document would come to our office either just by mail or just by someone walking in, and we would have to remove the staples, put it through a copier, and copy the document on a copier into a paper that had 3 holes in it. A 3-ring binder, and we'd do that till that book filled up, usually about 700 pages, and then we'd put that book on the shelf and we'd do the next one, and that's the way it started. So you had folks copying, you had folks doing all this, and now with the electronics, we're able to do that. Again, savings for Dauphin County of about, we've kind of come up with the figure of about, let's see, a Dauphin County employee, let's just say at minimum, would be about $25,000 to $30,000 salary. You add $20,000 worth of benefits, you're at $50,000. 10 employees, you're at $500,000 a year that we're saving.
Wow.
And so we've been able to do that without worrying about the service to the customer.
And all the old books that everybody used to look through, where'd they all go? Like, are they archived somewhere?
Yes, they are archived. We have them in an archive. We've protected them, so they're there. But most of every book that's necessary has been digitized and is available. We also started out with, when I started in 2004, we had 14 computer terminals, 14 printers for the public to use. We have one now.
Wow.
And it's very rarely used because whatever is on that terminal is someone can get anywhere at their home at any time of the day free of charge.
Well, I find that different counties handle things differently. I kind of wish it was more standardized, but I feel like you guys have one of the best systems. You can look up, deeds easily. You can look up mortgages. You can see what loans they had or who they sold to. I mean, it's unbelievable, the information that's out there and available.
There is a lot of information, and especially for folks in the land industry. You have realtors, mortgagors, or even one of the reasons we were excited about providing a free system for folks to go on. A lot of counties in the state of Pennsylvania have a paid system. We like that because, number one, it keeps people out of the courthouse that would normally have to come through security, so there's more security necessary, and more terminals that we just got rid of. So, and to pay to park in the city usually is in Harrisburg.
Yeah.
So we've got rid of that aspect. And we think that's more productive. Someone in the state of California can see who owns a piece of property, and maybe they're interested in developing that in Dauphin County. So that helps our community and economic development. So we have a broader view as to how beneficial that can be to have a free site rather than trying to say, all right, let's pay. The other thing is that when our system, and it rarely goes down for whatever reason, is that they can't complain too much if they're not paying for it. So
Right.
it's free. But that very rarely happens.
Is there an association?
There is.
Okay.
The Pennsylvania Recorder of Deeds Association, PRODA.
Is it in Harrisburg?
It's wherever you want it to be. So
Okay.
there is an association, but it's just us as recorders. We don't have a location or
Okay.
anything like that. I'm currently the president of Pennsylvania
You are?
Recorder Deeds Association, have been for the last 2 years. And that's one of the things you talk about, what do I do? I think with PRODA, you get to learn and not recreate the wheel. You find out what somebody else does. I'll remember this very easily, that back years ago when we had the flood of mortgages and flood of things, a lot of times mortgages were coming in and something was incorrect on them. We had to return them by mail. And for example, a notary was missing, money that they sent us to pay for the document was missing or incorrect, and we had to return that. Unfortunately, a lot of times during that period, the address in which it was, we require self-addressed stamped envelopes so the taxpayers don't have to pay for that. It was a different place that sent it. So in other words, the envelope they provided might be a different place. One county, I think it was in Altoona, city of Altoona, they provided, when they returned a document that was rejected for whatever reason, they put a big yellow sticker on it that said rejected documents enclosed. Please, please be noticed. Please notice. And I thought, well, that's an excellent idea. Let's do that. So we did those things. And the Recorder of Deeds Association, you get to learn those things from these other counties. You get, and when I first started, you had a situation like you talked about. Some counties do things you wish it was more standardized and things like that.
Right.
I think we're getting to that point.
Good.
I see the benefits of that, but I also see some other state-run kind of computer systems in different offices, and there's no way to change that. And I don't believe it's well run. And so then you're stuck. You as the office holder in Dauphin County can't use any other system. So again, it comes back to that situation where you're held accountable to the voters, to whether or not you're running your office the proper way. If you're not, the voters shouldn't keep you. You should find someone else.
So I have a question. So when someone sells or buys a property, transfer tax, does that run through your office?
It does. We collect millions.
So you get the check, and then the settlement agent is responsible to get you the check and the
documents to be recorded. So they have to get us all that money. And so we collect millions of dollars every month. It's a significant amount of money that comes through our office. 2% realty transfer tax is placed on all documents that are sales of land or property. And 1% of that, half of it goes to the state, to the Commonwealth.
Okay.
The other other 1% is split. That's half of it goes to the municipality in which it was located, and half goes to the school district.
So you're dispersing all those funds?
We do.
With 4 people in your office?
With 4 people.
Wow.
Yeah. So, and again, with technology, we were able to handle these types of things. One of the things that the benefit out of the COVID pandemic that we had, our office, fortunately, we had prepared for an emergency. Let's, for example, actually a bomb threat in Harrisburg. And years earlier, we prepared that if there was a bomb and blew up part of Harrisburg and the Dauphin County Courthouse, how long would it take us to get up and running? And we were prepared for that. And so COVID kind of did that. It shut down courthouses.
Right.
Our employees each have their own laptop that they can come home and actually record documents that are funneled in through what we call e-recording or e-filing. And we were the first in Dauphin County to allow e-filing in any of the offices. And that has been tremendous. It allowed folks to keep commerce going during COVID. And it also cuts down on the mail costs, paper, and you have an instant transaction. For example, someone in California, let's talk about that California person. They're sending this deed that's perfectly done with all the checks and monies with it, and it has original signatures. If they send that across country in the mail or FedEx, goodness gracious, where that could end up.
Right.
With e-filing, they can electronically transfer that document to us. We have a safe clearinghouse. We have 3 partners nationally that deal with that, where they send it to them, that partner sends it to us, it's in the proper form, and then we get paid with an ACH transfer. And they know, they being the submitter in California or wherever, knows the document. All right, we received the document, it is now in process, it has been recorded, and the money has been done.
So the majority are all done electronically?
They are now. They are. When I first started, there was none. It was just mail or walk-in. And now I would say upwards of 90% of the documents are e-filed.
So if you had a settlement yesterday, for example, how quick are you getting the funds and the deed?
Well, I don't know how quick that.
Okay, so there's no law saying you have to do it with a certain number of days.
Usually within 90 days is when, and the reason being the 90-day rule is that the government wants their money. So if you had a transaction, someone had just had a settlement yesterday, there is transfer tax sitting out there, and that check has been written. Well, the Pennsylvania Department of Revenue wants that in their account. So they want that. They don't want that sitting out there for months and months and months. Somebody else getting
90 days sounds like a long time, because I'm actually following a property, and they said it's sold, and I keep checking back, and I see nothing recorded. So I was just curious, because it's been a while.
Well, it's interesting because we get the phone call that says, hey, why hasn't this been recorded? And the reason we get that is because banks and everybody tells the customer that we're the ones holding this up. In Dauphin County, I can tell you, in most counties, we do all our documents the same day we receive them.
Wow.
So, for example, if somebody had closing, if you had a closing yesterday and you didn't get that that document's not recorded, it's in transit or sitting on somebody's desk, or somebody's not doing their job. It's not in our office.
That's interesting, because we've started doing a quarterly economic update, and we kind of rely on all those things being recorded for our information. That
don't let anyone tell you that the recorder is not recording them.
So
I know
interesting.
Cumberland County, York County, Perry County, Lebanon County, all the surrounding counties in central Pennsylvania have very proactive recorders who do electronically record, as well as run their offices very well.
So another question I had is, sometimes you'll see deeds, like for me, I'm always researching, trying to figure out pricing of properties and what it's sold for. If they say $1, how can you pierce that pretty easily, or not so much?
I think you can. The reason it would say $1 is because there might be a transaction that's not taxable under the real.
Well, in my world, a lot of people just don't want people to know what they paid for something.
Well, that is true.
Yeah.
However, if you look at that document, there is a page called the Statement of Value form. So in other words, if there's a deed and it's to $1 and it's a company, and some companies in Central PA like to use the dollar, they still have to pay transfer tax on not $1, but the fair market value of the property. And so that form that lets the state know as to what that tax should be is attached to the end of the deed. So you then can go to if you scroll through the deed, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5th page, usually we'll have the statement of value form, and you can see what the value of the property is.
The other thing I think is interesting, it's just an interesting point to me, is I'm surprised how inexpensive it is to have someone. So if I'm selling a property, typically the buyer is doing most of the work for closing, and their settlement company will usually write the deed for a fee, and it can be like $150. That's surprising to me.
And I get a lot of folks who ask the question, hey, should I change my deed? A spouse passes away, and they want to know whether or not, okay, I should change the deed. And most times they do not, because there's a joint tenancy, and that property then reverts to the person. So they don't need to go through the expense. It's $125 normally to record a deed in Dauphin County without any transfer tax. So, but yeah, lawyers are, I think it's a lot cheaper because you have the accessibility of those previous documents. Some folks, unfortunately, just copy the previous deed, and so you may have mistakes that perpetuate a long time. And but most times it's done easily because you do look at a previous deed, and there's the language in that deed for the dimensions of the property.
The other thing I think is, to me, somewhat perplexing and odd is if you're buying my property, you don't sign the deed. So really, I could deed you property
that I don't want,
that you don't want, and they're stolen all the time.
That is a possibility. We have as the Recorded Deeds Association. Again, I think you can win almost any bet in a group of folks to say, hey, did you get your property such and such? And I bet you didn't sign the deed. And they would argue with you, I'm sure I did sign the deed. Of course I did. No, you didn't. If you're the purchaser or the buyer, only the person giving up the property signs it. If you step back from that and say, what's one of the biggest contracts you're going to sign in your life is a deed that deeds the property to you. And it doesn't require the purchaser's signature. I guess the thought was two reasons. One is it's easier. So there is pushback from certain organizations who don't want both parties to sign because a document may have to go to separate places. And two is normally no one's going to give you property. It was interesting. There was a case years ago, I recall, during the time where there were a lot of foreclosures. And instead of this was out in Allegheny County in Pittsburgh way. And instead of the homeowner going through foreclosure, what they did was they purposely deeded the house back to the bank and said, here it is, you can't foreclose on me because now you own it. And the bank didn't like that. So it created all kinds of waves. It was very interesting. But it can happen. You're right. It can happen where somebody would deed you property. Most times nowadays, you would take it and say thank you because all property seems to be worthwhile. But there is a possibility of something coming due. And if you receive that tax bill in the mail for that property, you want to make sure you contact our office and we'll get the district attorney involved. But you constantly hear about title theft and things online, and talk radio, it talks about title theft. And these services that assist. I have not found that these services are not worthwhile in that they will do what they ask you to do, but nothing will prevent it from happening. There's no way they can have any knowledge of something occurring before it does, before it's recorded in our recorded deeds offices. One of the things that we're hopefully going to have here and within a few months in Dauphin County is what we call a public record notification, where our constituents can sign up for free, again, by an email address, and say, for example, you have a property and you want to be notified if any document comes in to change that property, mortgage put on it or somebody's trying to sell it. You would go on our site, you would plug in your email address. I think there's an advanced version that also allows you to get a text. So you plug in your phone number and you put in variations of your name. So in other words, I would put in Jim Zugay, James Zugay, James M. Zugay, and anything that came about with that name in our office and was recorded, that person would get a text or an email. So surrounding counties are doing those items. And it's really working. Again, part of that Recorder of Deeds Association, everybody learning from other folks
Right.
what to do better.
Yeah, best practices.
That's the best part of being part of that organization. And after 20 years, how do you stay fresh in the job? You stay fresh by staying up on the technology so you can save your county money and provide good service.
Yeah, so interesting.
Yeah, very cool. So what advice would you give to people who work in this industry that need to work with you or get your office involved in things they're doing? As I'm listening, I'm realizing I think I posed the question as being investors and business owners and people who are doing the transactions, but really maybe even title companies are going to work with you guys more than anybody else who
Absolutely.
are really having to look into this. So what are some tips or tricks or helpful advice that you would give to people who do need to work with your office and get all that information about mortgages, liens, titles, deeds, history?
The first thing is I would call the office or go on a website to see if they have a website to look at documents. When I first started, most counties didn't even have a website for their office. You couldn't even figure out how to call them. So you had to use the actual phone book for you folks that might not ever have used a phone book. So now most counties, almost all, I can't think of any, but most counties have a website for the county. They have an individual office for the Recorder of Deeds. And now a lot, I would say a majority, I would say at least 50 out of the 67 counties have a website where you can actually search for documents. Some are paid, most you have to pay for, some are free. But if you have any questions regarding that, contact the local recorder's office and talk to the employees. They're the ones who will be able to assist you on how to search. There's part of a problem without uniformity is that each county has a different software system.
Right.
I would say there's probably only 5 in Dauphin County, 5 different software systems. One of them is a software system that I would say a third of the counties have. So there's some familiarity with that software. But the difficulty for us, and when I selected a software, was that you wanted something that was robust for what we call the pro searcher, the searchers looking there all the time to be able to drill down and get the information they want. But you want something simplistic that if someone has never come to your site, they are walk through. And we believe we've done that in Dauphin County with our system. We're pleased with it. But that's what you want to look for. For agents, one of the things I would recommend is that to get to know the property. I have my wife, when she stayed home after our second child, she wanted to do something. We were both interested in land, and we were able to buy some properties that for rental, and that was my family home was our first one. Where I grew up in Middletown, and then we've acquired some others. But it was always interesting when I would attend an open house or to view a property, I would know the house better than the actual agent. And that happens a significant amount of times. So to take the additional time to learn about the properties, because if you do, you're going to get the sale if you know about the property. And it's not hard these days. The information's out there. Besides the deeds, on our system and our website, Dauphin County and a lot of other counties have tax assessment information through their tax assessment office. Can let you know the square footage or at least give you in the ballpark what's local, how much the taxes are. Nothing worse than when you go to an open house and you ask them how much are the taxes. Well, they stumble, they don't know, or this or that. So
your county, I think, makes it easier than most.
Do they?
My experience, and I don't do a ton of research anymore. I have people to help me, but my past experience, when I have had to look, I find you guys have more information than most.
Well, that's great.
Yeah.
One of the things when I see people, they say, "Oh, you've got that system. You've got that system." We don't hear many complaints, and I guess that's a testament of if you do have a good system, because I want to hear them. I want to hear the complaints, because don't sit on the complaints and stew about it. I want to fix it, and if we don't hear from the public, then we won't.
So if you want to implement a change, I'm just curious how the structure is. Like, does your office report to?
We are independently elected officials. So
Okay.
That's the other thing about that. We run the office like we see fit that is proper. We do have the county commissioners as an oversight in that they approve funding. So in other words, that would sort of be our boss, but our boss is the citizens of Dauphin County.
So you have a budget?
We have a budget that we have to stick to. We also are blessed that there is a fee that's attached to each document called record improvement, and that is only specifically designed to do some of these things that I'm talking to you about. Get a website, copy documents and upload them electronically. All those types of things. Having the record notification system, we can pay through those through that fund rather than going to the general tax.
Is it just a flat fee, or is it based on?
It's a flat fee.
I don't even remember seeing that before, so it must not be too
It's $5.
onerous. Oh, that's
It's $5.
nothing in this day and age. It's nothing.
It's $5, but it can add
Adds up. I'm sure it
adds
does.
up, but it's nice, and it's specifically designated. You can't go spend it on anything else. It's designated for you to improve the office, and folks are able to do that.
I'm curious, because you have a 20-year history with interest rate hikes and the price hikes of properties and not a lot of inventory. Are you seeing a lot less things happening? Or
We are. So right now it is a slower period where you would think that May, June, July, it'll get a lot better than it will be February. February is one of the lowest times, and so is November and December. But it will increase a little bit, but you have no refinancings. No one is anxious. I think you have a confluence of things that you had never thought. You have high interest rates. You have folks who have a low interest rate that are in a home. They don't want to move because if somebody's moving today, it's usually because they have to.
Right.
Because you're not going to trade in your 3.5 for a 7.5% mortgage unless you have to.
Right.
And so that's why the transactions are down. But it's also why there's no. You would think with high interest rates there'd be a glut of the market. Well, nobody's selling either. Right. So you have this strange confluence I've never seen before, that you have high interest rates and a low inventory of homes.
Yeah, it is interesting. And the prices are up.
Prices are still up.
Way up.
Still up.
I don't think they're going to come down.
I think there's always a thought that they would come down, but I think our most recent correction that we had about 10 to 12 years ago, where the prices went through the roof. I remember my wife and I's dream was always to have a place at the beach, the shore, and so forth. And we remember looking at a place there that I could barely, it was a top-bottom condominium in Ocean City, New Jersey. And I'll never forget, it was the top floor, and they wanted a price, and I could not stand in it. There was many times where I had to lean my head because it was like a 6-foot ceiling.
Right.
Oh my God.
And we saw this, and prices kept going up, and it was like almost like a lottery. It was unbelievable. We never did do that. I'm glad we did not, because if you're buying a rental or buying a home for a rental, you still have to make profit. You have to make the work, and prices were just going through the roof.
Yeah.
But what was interesting, the correction for that wasn't substantial. I wouldn't say it was, let's say on a $400,000 home, maybe it had been a $50,000 correction. All right, now it's down to $350,000. Sounds like a lot, but it's really not.
Right.
And then 5 years later, it's at $450,000 now again. So the correction was short-lived.
It's where you are. You kind of can't really see that it's going to jump a lot, and it does.
Yeah, it does. So they have not gone down to $120,000 for the home in suburban Harrisburg that was a 3-bedroom, one bath home. They're just not there unless they're well run down.
So interesting.
Yep.
Yeah.
Before we wrap up, any comments on land development? I think that was one piece that we brought up. Is there anything specific? Because you guys do subdivision and some of that pieces. So kind of how would land developers work with your office?
Well, they do in that the information is there. So in other words, we are an office that receives. So we don't give them advice, or we don't. We have the information that helps them decide what area is able to be developed. Okay. And so then we record the actual plan. The municipalities, the local municipalities are the ones who do the nuts and bolts and hard lifting of whether or not, should we expand in this area? Are we going to make this 700 acres? Are we going to turn it into housing development? Is that a good thing? Is that a bad? Fortunately, that decision's off our plate. That's a tough decision because you just wonder, how many more how many more homes do we need? They just keep coming.
Yeah. Well, I've liked it from the standpoint when I'm on your website, you can actually see what's been filed or thought of, even if it didn't happen. The history is amazing.
Exactly. When I first started, we used to, genealogists used to come to me and say, "Hey, Jim, we work during the day. We can't come in between 8 and 4:30. We work during the day, but we'd like to do this and research our deeds and things." And this is before we had the website. And what we did, we heard that, and our office used to open. It used to happen about 3 times a year. We'd call it Historical Society Saturdays. And we'd be open from 8 to noon, and we'd invite the local historical societies or anybody else that wanted to do genealogy. And my staff would donate their time. We'd come in, we'd have coffee, donuts, and we'd enjoy their company. And then after progress happened and everything became available online, we stopped it because there was no reason for them to come in. It was all online. And I still run into folks from historical societies, especially in the Halifax area. "Well, we miss coming to see you." I said, "I miss having you." So
you used to probably have visitors left and right, and now you've very little.
When anyone comes in, again, good government. One of the things we're able to do is our office, let's just say 100% of our office size-wise, was cut by 60% because we were able to take books and things and move them out of the office, put them in a storage area where they're safe. But now that area where we just had books that are now online and anybody can see is now the clerk of court's office. The district attorney on the second floor of the courthouse, we're on the first, they were in desperate need of space. And the clerk of courts was the neighboring office for them on the second floor for many years. Well, the space that we used to occupy with books, we were able to give that to the clerk of court's office. They came down and moved in the first floor, and now the DA has extra space. So again, the technology and to be able to keep up with the times, we're always trying to help the taxpayer in Dauphin County, because that's one of the first things I always talk to my staff. You drop everything, customer service is number one.
We appreciate that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks a lot. We have a closing question. We ask everybody the same question. So here it is for you. If you could go back and start your career over, but keep all the knowledge and experience that you have from your years of it, is there anything you would do differently?
I've been fortunate. So I can't really say there is anything differently. I was fortunate in that my wife, who wanted to stay at home with our second child and raise our children, she was able to do so. It was tough, but we did that. I was fortunately able to visit. They were great sports stars, of course, but you're all children. You look back and say how wonderful they are. They were terrific, two wonderful daughters, and we got to go to all their events and things like that. And that was the thing that I kept telling myself. I saw so many attorneys out there who were divorced or had alcoholism or drug abuse and things. And one of the things that I saw with that is they either diverted away from their family, and I don't think I would change that in the least, because when you don't have a home to come home to, and I'm in politics and the law, if you come home after battling the whoever on your day, and you come home and you've got battles at home, well, your stress level and everything just goes up. I've never had that. I've had a wife who understands that if I'm out at midnight after a fundraiser, that I'm there for the family. I'm there because it helps us as a family. Not out there just enjoying my time. It's about meeting folks and doing the right things. So if you have an understanding spouse, if you have kids that are understanding, that makes it go. So I don't think I would do anything different. I probably, and I've started to do this more now that I'm a little bit older, is do more mentoring. I always feel like giving back. I always think that time is your most important resource, not money. And I've coached. I've been on boards. In fact, I'm on a softball board, girls softball board for Hershey, and my daughters haven't played softball in 12 years. So I like the folks, and it is a good organization. So I'm trying to do more like mentoring or trying to get involved more now that our kids are grown and out there in the world. My wife and I are finding more opportunities to volunteer. She volunteers at a food bank twice a week, and I'm trying to find those extra situations where I was running to practices and games, now I'm running to meetings and things and helping folks.
It sounds like you've figured out balance that a lot of us maybe haven't.
Again, I've been fortunate. I really have, and I look back at that and say, it's nothing. It's some things I did do, but a little luck goes a long way too.
Yeah, sounds like you're blessed. That's good.
I am.
Yeah.
Well, Jim, thank you so much for being on today.
Thanks for
all
having
your
me.
insights.
It's
and
been
wisdom.
great.
Learned a
meeting
lot.
you ladies, and
Yeah.
the studio here is wonderful, and I'm glad
Thank
you had
you.
me.
Thank
Thanks so
you.
much.
Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Take care. That was Jim Zugay sharing his insights into the Office of Recorder of Deeds, property taxes and transfers, and much more. For more information on Jim, the Office of Recorder of Deeds for Dauphin County, or to learn more about SVN Latus, click the links in the show notes. Thanks for listening to Beyond the Deal.